Metroid Dread is many things, but failure isn't one of them. Quite the opposite, in fact. Dread, as of this recording, has sold 3 million copies worldwide. It was the fastest and currently is the highest selling Metroid game in the series in Japan, the UK, and the US. It even won the Best Action Adventure Game at the 2021 Game Awards. Metroid is known for its immersive alien worlds for the player to explore in many different ways. That and being as scarce as life on the moon, as Metroid games come out way apart from each other. There are no bad Metroid games. However, if that were true, this video wouldn't exist. Metroid has kind of had a rough past decade, to say the least. The start of its downfall was in 2010 with the release of Metroid Other M. If you're a Metroid fan, I'm sure you're dying of cringe and embarrassment just hearing the name. I mean, just look at its Metacritic score. For those of you who aren't fans of Metroid, the reason Other M is so controversial is because of the baffling result of a story written by someone who was snorting slugs and smoking concrete. More egregious, though, was how Samus was handled. Samus is typically known as the most renowned and respectable bounty hunter in the galaxy. She needs no introduction. In Other M, Samus is portrayed as a monotone, melodramatic, whiny damsel in distress who is quite literally just there to be bossed around and treated like a servant by Adam Malik, a bitch. It's a mystery that will never be answered as to why Sakamoto even remotely thought this game was a good idea. Don't get me wrong, it's a decent action game, but it is wildly an insult of a Metroid game. However, 6 years later, Metroid Prime Federation Force, which might as well not even be a Metroid game, came out in 2016. There isn't really anything particularly wrong with it, except Samus really isn't even in the game. I think she's like a secret boss at the end of the game. I don't know, I know almost nothing about this game, but it wasn't received particularly well by the fandom, getting only a 64 on Metacritic, so what else do I really need to say? Now, a year later, we see some semblance of a redemption with Metroid Samus Returns, a remake of Metroid 2 Return of Samus. However, this release did not go without its controversy. Nintendo got a lot of backlash with this release. Shortly before its release, Nintendo filed a cease and desist order to a fan remake of Metroid 2 to the creator of AM2R, or another Metroid 2 remake. This remake was 10 years in the making when Nintendo struck it down. This was one of the most passionate fan projects in Nintendo history, and they just struck it down. It's believed they did this because they were launching their own Metroid 2 remake, which is now known to be Samus Returns, and didn't want it to get in the way of that. So Samus Returns didn't start off too strong. Hell, as of last year, it barely sold 500,000 copies. So if that doesn't say anything, I don't know what does. However, it started to look like Metroid was going to be one of Nintendo's long forgotten dead franchises. Not all hope was lost though, because Metroid Prime 4 was announced the same year at E3 2017. Now, while I wasn't a Metroid fan at the time, this gave everyone hope for a short time until there was an update in 2019 saying Metroid Prime 4 was being restarted in development due to them not liking how the process was going. They took it from Bandai Namco and handed it to Retro Studios to work on Prime 4. But it's confusing as to why it wasn't with Retro from the start, since they were the ones who made the original Prime trilogy, Prime 1, 2, and 3. So I don't know why they didn't just have Retro creating Prime 4 from the jump, but we haven't heard anything about Metroid Prime 4 since. Metroid definitely desperately needed a saving grace, and lo and behold, that's what we got during E3 2021. Metroid Dread was looking promising, but there's a reason why everyone was so hyped for this game. Metroid Dread was originally planned to be a 2006 DS game and was even mentioned in Metroid Prime 3 Corruption. Dread was cancelled because Sakamoto and his team weren't able to fully capture the story and game they wanted to make on the DS, so they cancelled it and waited for Nintendo to have a console powerful enough to fulfill their dream. Eventually, the Switch came out, and now here we are. Dread was also received warmly because it was refreshing. It was the first original 2D Metroid game in 11 years since Other M and 15 since Dread's initial intended release. Okay, this is post-production. I realized I had made a mistake. I said Dread was the first 2D Metroid game in 11 years since Other M, in 15 years since Dread's initial intended release. Well, yes, it has been 15 years since Dread's initial intended release. Other M is not a 2D Metroid game, it is a 3D game, 3D action adventure game. So the last 2D Metroid game we got was Metroid Fusion back in 2002, a whole 20 years ago. So it's been 20 years since we had an original 2D Metroid game. So Dread was a big deal. Hopes were high for Dread, and Nintendo contributed a lot to that. They marketed the shit out of Dread all the way up to and even after release. Marketing is such a powerful tool in selling a product, and it actually works. For example, Raiden Shogun's banner is the highest selling banner in Genshin Impact because of how hard they marketed her as a character. Hell, even her rerun banner was the highest selling rerun banner. She wouldn't have made anywhere near as much money as she did if MiHoYo didn't market her as hard as they did. Marketing is such a powerful tool in selling any kind of product. Dread is a sequel to Metroid Fusion and was developed by Mercury Steam, who also made Samus Returns, and I feel they are the best at making a 2D Metroid game. Dread went back to the puzzle-filled immersive 2D worlds that we were used to, the lore and story being told through the world and subtext. Samus also returned to form as the badass, renowned, and respectable bounty hunter that we all knew and loved. No longer is she anything like she was in Other M, and that is a blessing. Samus's badass show don't tell cutscenes are back as well. Although there is voice dialogue in this game, it is done right. It's not scattered all over the place and terrible like in Other M. Voice dialogue actually builds upon the world and lore of ZDR in the series. The whole time Samus speaks is timed so well, or the one time Samus speaks is timed so well and is very impactful. It's probably my favorite moment in the entire game. I love everything about this game, and it is currently my favorite Metroid game to date. I absolutely adore it. This game brought back everything the series is known for and loved for. It also builds on the lore of the series and Samus herself. The critical success of Dread was cause for hope. This shows Nintendo that people are actually interested in the series and will hopefully result in more games. The future for this series is looking bright, and it's mainly thanks to Metroid Dread. Metroid is my second favorite franchise of all time, right behind Xenoblade, and I am so excited, and more than excited, to see Dread doing so well. Metroid has always been an underdog series and will hopefully become a heavy hitter in the near future, like a lot of Nintendo's bigger IPs. I will definitely be looking forward to that iconic end screen. See you next mission.